Assalamu alaikum. I'm Ibn Umar, also known as Aladdin of the West, and today will be the final installment in this three-part series discussing the hadith of when the Prophet ﷺ was bewitched. And I alluded to this video in the other two, and I mentioned that this one would be attacking the very authenticity of the ahadith that mention this story. So inshallah, that's what I'll do. I'm going to talk about the narrations, the narrators, as well as scholars of the past and how they regarded the hadith, and also other leanings as to why this hadith might be inauthentic. I also mentioned in the other videos, though, that even if this hadith is authentic, there's no problem that the Christian apologists try to propagate. And alhamdulillah, Allah will always perfect His religion and purify our hearts with His light. So let's look at the actual narrations of the hadith so we can get into it. So if you take a look at my browser, you will see here a hadith narrated by Aisha radiallahu anha, and this is in the Book of Medicine, number 76, and the hadith number is 5765, Book 76, Hadith 79, and it is one of the normal narrations where you know the narration, but I think what's more interesting is the sanad, the chain of narration here. So if you look at the chain, there's a bunch of narrators, and then it comes up to Hisham from his father, an Abi from Aisha, who related the story. Now Hisham, his name is Hisham bin Urwa, and he was a resident of Medina, but then he moved to Iraq. And we'll get into that actually in a moment. So Hisham narrates it from his father, and his father's name was Urwa. And Urwa narrates it from Aisha, radiallahu anha. And I want to show you another hadith, if you look here. And this is from Sahih Bukhari 6391. It's a different book, a different hadith number. There's a variation in the text, the matan, but the sanad is virtually the same. After Hisham, it's different, but going up to it from Hisham to his father, from Aisha, and then the story. The thing is, this hadith has the exact same sanad in every single variation except two. And those two have the same sanad, and that's actually even more inauthentic than this sanad. And I'll get into why this sanad is inauthentic in a moment. Basically, Hisham was a resident of Medina, as I mentioned, and he moved to Iraq. He moved to Kufa, and he died there. And we can find more about Hisham in a book by Imam al-Dhahabi, and it is Siyar A'lam an-Nubala. And here I have an online copy just for ease of access. And what we can see here is that different scholars and different jurists and different muhaddith talk about the authenticity of Hisham. And it's reported by these scholars that Hisham became very feeble-minded when he became older. And if you look here, there's different narrations for different people, but I'll mention a few. Uqayli said that he started to degenerate later in the last part of his life. In Arabic, قَدْ خَرِفَ فِي آخِرِ عُمْرِهِ. And basically what happened was, he moved to Iraq, and after he moved to Iraq, his mind started to degenerate. And Imam Malik mentions this as well. Imam Malik said that he does not recommend Hisham after he moved to Iraq. And Imam Malik, fun fact, actually was a pupil of Hisham, and in his Muwatta, there were a lot of narrations from Hisham. However, this narration of bewitchment was not mentioned in Malik's Muwatta. So there's a few implications of this. Either it was known by Imam Malik that this hadith was not authentic, and Hisham did not narrate it to Malik, because Hisham at this point in time was young and his mind was perfect because he lived in Medina. Then he moved to Iraq, and perhaps he forgot that this hadith was inauthentic and he started to re-narrate it. Because we find it odd that there's so many other hadith by Hisham in Malik's Muwatta, but not this one. We also find that people would say that he would narrate things from his father that his father had not said. And if we look back at the hadith, he's narrating from his father. So all of these reasons sort of tie into why this sanad is not authentic. Hisham is not a reliable narrator at the time of this hadith being narrated. And we can prove that this was narrated in Kufa because it's not present in Malik's Al-Muwatta. Now again, this is a possibility. This is not a certainty. However, I find it extremely likely that this is the case. Also, the second sanad that I mentioned comes from Zayd ibn Arqam. And inshallah, you'll be able to see on the screen the sanads, the isnad, and the category of the chains. So this chain is actually more problematic than the chain from Hisham because at least there is some doubt as to whether this narration is reliable or not. But this one is only found in two different ahadith, in two different collections, An-Nasiri and Ahmad. And if you look here, we have it being related from Abu Muawiyah, from A'mash, from Yazid ibn Hayyan, from Zayd ibn Arqam. However, there are two missing links. One is between Abu Muawiyah and A'mash, because Abu Muawiyah died in 195, while A'mash died in 147 after the Hijrah. And so there's something in between there that's not mentioned, or we're just taking Abu Muawiyah's word that A'mash narrated it, and we have no proof of this. And the same thing goes for, we are taking Yazid ibn Hayyan's word that Zayd ibn Arqam narrated it, when there is no proof to back this. And then again, this is just a sanad, okay? And this is clear-cut proof that these narrations should be looked at and reevaluated. I am in no means a hadith scholar. However, I will quote a different hadith scholar, and his name was Al-Jassas, and he was a Hanafi. And he mentioned that this hadith was likely created by, or this hadith and its likes were created by heretics. And he wrote this in his Ahkam. And then we also find again that Malik didn't narrate it in his Muwatta. Okay, Tirmidhi and Abu Dawood didn't narrate it in their Sunans, even though this hadith was very widespread. So we can assume that Tirmidhi and Imam Tirmidhi and Abu Dawood did not believe this narration to hold authentic. And we already mentioned the whole story with Imam Malik. Plus, we also find in the text multiple variations, different contradictions. Sometimes it'll say the Prophet ﷺ went to get the comb. Other times it'll say he ﷺ sent men to go get it. There's a lot of discrepancies within the hadiths themselves, and even the ones that are narrated from Hisham. So these ahadith need to be reevaluated. I'm not saying that they're completely inauthentic, but this does present a case that these ahadith could be inauthentic. Even if they are authentic, it's not a problem, as I proved in the first two videos here, inshallah. And that's it. So, inshallah, in the future, I'll be upgrading my mic, my camera. This is the third video. I did this. I'm recording this at 4 a.m. right now. It's the day before Ashura. So, inshallah, this will be a benefit to you, and I hope that you enjoy the video. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.